now why millennials are kind of trenched in and not making a move because they don't want to lose their money. They don't want to lose their purse strings. This was the time for employees to be very strategic and think how they can create multiple opportunities for them to have a very different experience. So they can be with the same company, but have the promise of you get to do this for 2 years, and then we're going to switch you to this role for 2 years, and then you're going to do this for 2 years, all with the intention of this is the whole ecosystem of what makes you a better employee, but more importantly, retaining them for the long haul. So you're just going to have to be eclectic, be very imaginative, and be willing to be flexible, and then they'll be willing to stay.
Well, you make a great segue into the perspective that I've been looking at since, you know, we started researching this idea of preparing new graduates and those early entry into the workplace, how to create leaders from that group. And so we know that now it's not just Generation Y or the millennials, but we've also got Gen Z who are entering the workplace. And they are, I believe, between the ages of maybe like 9 all the way up to 23 or something like that. So you have 23-year-old college graduates who are going into the workforce, and that creates 4 generations. So you've got Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, baby boomers, and we've got to figure out how do we transition from, you know, all of those, the thinking and cultural aspects of all of those generations in the workplace, but how do we retain, like you said, offer benefits and incentives that are appealing to those newer generations. But on top of that, in order for an organization to continue to exist, you've got to think about not just retaining them, but turning them into the next generation of administrators or principals or whatever
Department
leadership
heads.
role. Department heads. And so the problem then, based on the research that we were doing, is that there's a shortage of new leaders prepared to advance their careers within the agency or some sort of a successful succession plan. And so what it does is it disrupts the workflow, there is loss of opportunity cost, and then there's a diminishing positive culture, which we know is important to that next generation. What we proposed as far as the solution to that is that you've got to be proactive. You can't wait until it's time for someone to retire and then start thinking about how are you going to replace them and retain all of that knowledge that it took over years to be able to get
to peacefully transition that,
and
that information.
And what can result on the adverse end of this situation is you get workplace bullying. So you get new people with fresh ideas, new energy, engaging with those who are more seasoned and they've been tempered, they know what to expect, and you get that conflict in the workplace, and then the younger ones feel like, this person doesn't like me or I'm not good enough, and then the older generation feels like, well, they're disrespectful and they're not.
I agree. So it's important to set the tone from management, is that we have this intentional engagement between the newcomers and the ones that have been with there, the legacy workers, that we need this exchange of information. We need this exchange of intellectual assets, because all of that is important to our company to make it a going concern. So I think if management takes on the role of going ahead and saying, hey, this is very intentional, this is very much on point, but they set the standard so that the climate then can be that, okay, this is the new way of being, we have got to make this work, because it's not just about being nice, it's about being in compliance with what management has told us to do. And if you're not doing that, then you don't want to be seen as an employee that's not in compliance with policies and procedures.
Yeah, because then you have even bigger issues. You've got legal issues, you've got loss of revenue issues. And so that certainly doesn't lead to a sustainable organization. Couple of things to consider that came from the research that we did too for the leadership side, not necessarily the new career or new people entering the workforce is that, you know, innovation, we all think about innovation when it comes to our products and services, but do we think innovatively when it comes to cultivating new leaders? And then being able to transfer knowledge about what the path looks like to senior leadership and department heads. And then that idea of, you know, we've been here for so long, this is how we've always done it. How willing are we to do something different so that
Yeah.
we can prepare the next generation? And
And a lot of times you can make that happen in just a different environment. It's the same information, but instead of doing it in the meeting room on the fourth floor, why not go to the park? You know, why not go? You can social distance in the park. You can maybe say, okay, instead of us having our brainstorming session in the lunchroom, maybe we can do it at a, you know, a health food store, right? There are a lot of stores that are trying to get engagement in any way they can. Wouldn't it be welcoming for someone to call you and say, we want to have our next meeting in your produce department, set up a table, and by the way, we'll get some information on, you know, what these vegetables can do and what discounts we can get. Right now, this engagement and this infusion rather of healthy living and change management and advocacy for an ongoing workplace where each generation values the knowledge that we all have and to share that openly and do it in a different environment might just a very catalyst they need just for people to open up and they are because they're in a different place.
Yeah. Well, you're describing exactly what we came out of that research with, understanding of what reverse mentorship looks like. We know traditional mentorship is when the person who's got more longevity, more tenure, will teach the person that's new and younger. But now there's this idea, because it feeds into the mentality of the millennial generation, that they want to be valued and recognized for what they bring to the table as well. You know, they've got a lot of knowledge and expertise when it comes to technology. They've got a lot of knowledge and expertise when it comes to the language of social media. You know, there's a lot of things that we can learn from them that are going to help grow the business environment. Or, you know, even if you're a small business owner, we know how much we value having a young person come in and handle our social media or our digital media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm still trying to TikTok.
Well, hey, you know, I just think that that's a valuable aspect of what they bring. And when they're recognized for having that expertise, it really leads to them wanting, like you said earlier, to want to stay longer than the 5 years. Yeah. So there's a few things that we have proposed to various agencies and some of the clients that we work with in terms of developing leaders. This isn't necessarily getting them to want to stay beyond that 5-year threshold, like the statistics are saying. But one of them, when you're talking about mentorship and when you're talking about leadership development, is to have a plan. And we refer to it as the professional leadership plan. And there is certain principles that come along with that. And it also, at the end of it, helps you to develop and articulate your leadership philosophy. And I think that's important. I don't think a lot of people are able to really articulate what their leadership philosophy is.
Yeah, and I think through this period, we're going to have the emergence of both intentional leadership and accidental leadership. Those that have been put in a leadership position because nobody stepped up. So it's accidental, but it's needed. And then those are find themselves having to grow into this because we have this now new elephant in the room that we have to manage this pandemic, and it's going to be here a while. We can't ignore it. So we get to embrace it with intention and to say, this is just another element. And we can look back to other generations who got through, you know, 9/11, who got through polio, who got through segregation, other, you know, pandemic-like information. But unlike those who were isolated incidences, this worldwide situation is going to allow us a lot of grace.
Yeah.
Since we're all going through it together, it's going to be a lot of grace and a lot of sharing of information that's going to lead to some great lessons learned and some great leadership value that's going to come out of that.
Well, I like what you said about the accidental leader. A lot of times there are people who want to be leaders, and then there are people who come up with a great idea, maybe even have vision, and everybody points towards them and say, hey, I think you should take the lead on that. And I would say, again, from the research, when that accidental leadership situation happens, you should still seek a mentor. There is absolutely nothing like having somebody who will take you under their wings and give you some sage advice. Yeah. And then, you know, if you are in the mindset of wanting to be a leader or an administrator, department head, whatever that might look like to you, volunteer for the role. You know, find opportunities to volunteer for that role, and also seek out mentorship at the same time.
That's it. At the end of the day, self-awareness is the catalyst that makes for change that's very intentional. So once you're self-aware, because really the only thing you can really change is yourself and how you feel about the situations that evolve around you. And so in Axiogenics, you have assets and you have biases. And it's not that the biases need to be fixed, you just need to be aware of them. And awareness is an ongoing learning, you know, intention. It's not like I've learned this and I don't need to do. This is a lifelong quest to know yourself best. And so these assessments and these tools allow you to add value year over year, no matter if you're working for yourself or for an industry or for a company for 5-6 years, or you decide to strike out and do something totally very, you know, philanthropic, and you want to start your own nonprofit. Whatever that thing is, being self-aware will very much serve you in every capacity.
Yeah. And I like the fact that the axiogenic assessment gives you options for pivoting. You know, if there's something about the situation or your discovery of self-awareness that you want to change, you have a guide to help you with that, as opposed to, and I think there's some benefit too in knowing what Myers-Briggs can show you, which is your preferences. You know, we always talk about your natural tendencies, just like your left hand over your right hand. You prefer to write with one because it's more comfortable for you. And so that's how Myers-Briggs reveals what your preferences are. So, you know, once you learn that part and you discover, oh, there's something that I really want to learn how to adjust, I think the marriage between those two assessments really can be really.
So when you engage with us, you get both. You get to see where you are from a perspective of your preferences and what you get to change and tools to get you there. So that's good stuff.
Well, looking forward to our next conversation. Always engaging, love these kinds of talks.
Yeah, so with this one, when we began with the end in mind, strategies for keeping the millennials on board as you strategic plan for your succession planning, just know with what we're going through, it doesn't really negate the fact that you have to plan. It even really emphasizes the fact that you must set inside a blueprint to keep your best people on board, because the ones that are really talented, they have options, and they're going to start, you know, using those options because of everything that's going on. A lot of people are planning some bold moves. Here's some things you can put in place so you don't lose your best people.
Absolutely. So until next time, we look forward to you joining us. We'll talk to you
next time.
Soon. Bye.